You are listening to Ministry Minded, a podcast of Step Up to Life, where we discuss the gospel, theology, and how to navigate the highs and lows of Christian ministry. Living out the Christian faith is a complex thing to navigate, so we're here to help you think through it as you progress on your journey. All right, today is an exciting day because we have an announcement, a new development at Step Up to Life, and we wanted to bring that to you through the podcast because it's one of the easiest ways to get the word out. And so, Lincoln, what's going on? What new changes are coming down the pike? And oh, by the way, if you're wondering why Lincoln is sitting in bed, it's because he just had major hamstring surgery, and he was a good enough sport to jump on the podcast with us in spite of the pain. So he'll probably sign off a little early, but if you're wondering about his environment, that's what's going on.
Yeah, it's very dangerous to be on the Step Up to Life staff. They might have you do strange things like trying to surf when you're an old man. So yeah, I'm glad to be doing better. Reattach my hamstring to my sit bone, and into a journey here of a few weeks of not doing a whole lot of anything as it heals. First 2 or 3 months, super important that it heals well, and then the prognosis is great to return back to a full active lifestyle. So that's that. That explains my pillow, and it explains my early goodbye.
So we want to introduce to you a guy named Alex Daum. And Lincoln, who is Alex? How do we know him? And what's this news we have coming down the pike?
Yeah, well, probably 7, 8 or 9 years ago, I was introduced to this ministry in central Nebraska called the Todd Becker Foundation. And immediately there was this kindred spirit in terms of a vision, focus, Christianity, discipleship, evangelism. And the more I got to know these guys, the more I saw one of the most effective ministries that I think I've ever seen in over 40 years of ministry. Sorry about my voice. They jammed a tube down my throat, I guess, so I wouldn't die or something during the surgery. And I think my throat's still recovering. Anyway, that's why I sound like a frog. But I was so impressed with this ministry, and we were so close the way we viewed so many things that we just developed this relationship of going out there regularly every year to train their interns. They have about 10, 12 interns, and Alex can share more. But to train them and Step Up to Life and evangelism. And then it just kept going further, where the relationship went deeper. And there was this young guy named Alex who was great with people. As we were doing our training, he would jump in occasionally with great thoughts and ideas. And so I just thought, wow, what a great guy. So fast forward now from that point, 8 years or whatever, and Alex will be joining us on our Step Up to Life staff team. So we're super excited about that. I'm in my 60s, Nick's in his 40s. Alex is at the top end of his 20s. Yep. So we are covering a wide age group with our staff now, which is really exciting. And Nick, you can obviously talk more about his role and his title and the thoughts that you have for him. And then Alex, can't wait for folks to hear from you.
Cool. Thanks, Lincoln. If you need to go on, feel free to sign off. But thanks for kind of setting that background.
Yes, I probably will. I'm not wimping out, suck it up. But today's a day where I just got to be smart and try to stay comfortable. So thanks for tuning in. If you're tuning in, you're going to love Alex. We all love him and his whole family. Great family. He'll talk about that too. And then we're excited about the expansion of Step Up to Life into the youth culture. So you guys are going to be hearing more about that. But I just want to endorse Alex's family and just say how excited we are to have him joining us real soon. So thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Lincoln.
Bye-bye. All right. Thanks.
Bye-bye.
We'll see you. Yeah. So for those of you listening to this, hearing this might be like, wait, what is going on? So basically, in the plainest terms, we've created a new position at Step Up to Life, the U.S. National Director of Youth Evangelism and Strategic Partnerships. partially because Alex has had a decade of experience networking all over the Midwest region through different networks of parachurches, churches, different organizations. And that's kind of his background, in particular with evangelism. And so that fit really well with what we had been praying about for the last couple of years, really, as Lincoln and I talked and thought about, well, what would it look like to get Step Up to Life into a younger demographic? And as we were very honest with ourselves, both of us looked at each other and said, well, it's probably not you or me. I'm youngish, but I'm also oldish. And so that's not my world anymore, although I have a passion for youth and I'll still be involved. So Alex, why don't you introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about your background, what you've done so far, and then kind of how this conversation between Step Up to Life and you transpired to the point where you're coming on staff this summer.
Yeah, well, thank you, Nick. It is exciting to be here. And yeah, so like you said, my name's Alex Daum. Brief background on who I am. I'm married to my wonderful wife, almost 8 years now. So, and we have our fourth kid coming here in about 2 weeks. So, a lot going on. Kids range from 6 down to 14 months. Now we have a newborn coming here in 2 weeks. So, exciting stuff. Really briefly, yeah, just to share a bit about who I am. I've been with the Todd Becker Foundation since I graduated high school. So I went to high school up in South Dakota, and I grew up a pastor's kid, great family. I'm so grateful to my background and to my grandpa was a pastor. My dad was a public school teacher along with my mom for several years. And then he felt a call into ministry. And so he became a pastor. And so ever since I was 3.5 years old, my dad was a pastor and in small town, South Dakota, and faithfully served for 18 years at a church there. And so I just got to see him do his thing and just be really faithful to God in all those seasons of ministry and life. And so, however, though, I was always so sensitive to the things of God. I'm so grateful to God that was my heart posture, I think, for the most part throughout my life. But as I got older into high school and had friends that just started introducing me to sinful activities like pornography and all that type of stuff, and I was like so innocent, right? I didn't know what that was, but that led me into a journey of really walking away from God. And I just didn't really care for the things of God. My mind was darkened and perverted. My heart was just far from God. I think that what Jesus says in Mark 7:6, I believe, where he says, "These people honor me with their lips, but their hearts are far from me," perfectly sums up who I was my senior year of high school, really starting in high school. And the crazy thing about that, again, youth pastor or a pastor's kid, and I was on the youth group worship team and just all that stuff, going through the motions of what a Christian's supposed to look like. And so, but it was my senior year that the Todd Becker Foundation came to my high school. And about 2 months before they came, we had a tragedy in our community, and a family of 6 was tragically killed and was close to some of them. I was actually the closest with dad, and I can't get into all the details. There was just so much that happened in that whole tragedy that is a whole podcast in and of itself. But in that moment, I was really faced with eternity, and that where I go when I die is something that I should really, really, really be concerned about. Right. So I was kind of living an unconcerned life to bring in Step Up to Life. I knew a lot about God, but I just didn't really care that much. I cared enough to play the part and look good. But I think that tragedy really put me on the step of concern. Like I was concerned about where I would go when I died, and I was concerned about eternal things. And then the Todd Becker Foundation showed up, and Keith is the ministry director here at the Todd Becker Foundation. He presented the gospel, and he talked through his brother Todd being killed in an alcohol-related car accident, and how Todd's first step off the narrow path, so to speak, was pornography, and how that led him into these deeper things and more sinful things that ultimately led to his death. And I remember sitting in those bleachers 11 years ago now, and my heart just pumped. I mean, it was just coming out of my chest. And I went forward when Keith gave an altar call. And I remember thinking, I was like, I'm not going to talk to anyone. But if they come and talk to me, then I'm going to share everything. And no
Mm.
more than 5 seconds later, out of a whole crowd of people who came forward, Keith approached me. And he came up and said, "Hey, I'm Keith." And we went and sat on the bleachers in the back of the gym for probably 45 minutes. And I just shared with him the sin in my life. And he went through scripture after scripture after scripture. And it was at that point that I was at this place of deep conviction and stepped onto true godly repentance. And ultimately, that led to saving faith. And my life was totally changed
Mm.
that day. Never went back to pornography. Never, it's just crazy how radically God changed my life, and I'm so grateful to God for that. And so that led me on the journey of then joining the Todd Becker Foundation right after I graduated high school. And long story short, been here 10 years with the ministry. I've absolutely loved it. I'm so grateful to God that I've been here. It has, they've just discipled me into the man that I am today. And I couldn't be more grateful for them and the ministry that God has called them to. And so that's briefly. I maybe I got into too much there, too much detail, but that's a little bit about who I am and the work that God's done in my life.
Sure. No, that's awesome. Thank you for sharing that, because a lot of people, this is their first time hearing from you. So it's helpful to get these details. Who are you? How did you come to Christ? What's that experience? Will you fit well and will step up to life? And given that, let's dovetail there. What's your experience been? First of all, what does the Todd Becker Foundation do? For those who don't know, they might be thinking, okay,
Yeah.
what is the context of this? What has Alex actually been doing the last 10 years? So give us a little overview of that. And then maybe also explain how Step Up to Life has interfaced with you guys over the years and how we got connected.
Yeah. Yeah. So the Todd Becker Foundation goes into public high schools and does outreach events in high schools. And a lot of people are like, what? How do they do that? It's a long story, but God gave the Todd Becker Foundation a platform through the tragic death of Todd Becker in an alcohol-related car accident. And so from that, Keith, Todd's older brother, started going into public schools. And during the school day, it would be a more sanitized, I guess, message, but Keith would still bring in Matthew 7:13, which said the wide path leads to destruction and the narrow road that leads to life. And so he would still share a quote from Jesus. And that was the quote that he shared that day when I gave my life to Christ. And I still remember that very clearly. And so that was what I came forward to do, was to put my life on the narrow road. But so we do that, those sorts of events. So that's what I've been involved in. The Todd Becker Foundation has an internship called Stint, which is a short-term ministry internship program. It's a 9-month intensive discipleship program. It's completely cost-free. And so it's for those right out of high school to come and join the ministry, to grow more deep in their relationship with Christ, strengthen their faith, travel the Midwest, and serve on the front lines of ministry, really, right in public high schools. These young people come, they're 18 years old and they're reaching their peers. They're going into high schools now and going and sharing the gospel with people who are their same age. So it's really, really, really special and really powerful experience to help strengthen their faith before they go off to college or out into the workforce. That was what Stint was really birthed out of, was the statistic that 70% of those raised in the church walk away from church after graduation. And so Stint was birthed to try to stop that statistic as best as we could, to train up. Lincoln already said it, but we have approximately 8 to 10 interns a year to train up those interns, disciple them, help them become well-rounded Christians is kind of our phrase that we use, help them develop into well-rounded followers of Jesus Christ. So when they leave this internship, they can go stand firm on their faith and be a light for Christ in this culture. And so my role with them has it's changed a lot over the years. I came in as an intern, and as you know, Nick, when you're in ministry, you wear so many different hats. And so when I came in as an intern, man, I remember the evangelism training just blew me away. It was so exciting to actually have a game plan for sharing your faith.
Mm.
Where when someone came up and was like, how can I be saved? Or how do you know God exists? Or why can you trust the Bible? To actually have the ability to give a thoughtful answer, a well thought out answer. And so that's what I started as an intern doing, was just learning how to go and actually have a one-on-one gospel conversation. So over these last 10 years, I've had thousands probably of one-on-one conversations with students, talking with them through where they're at in their spiritual journey and helping them come to a decision, a point of choosing to follow Jesus or choosing to not follow Jesus,
Mm.
right? Is really what it comes down to. And so then after a few years of being an intern, I came on staff, was the high school scheduler, scheduling all of our events with high schools, working with administration, and then became one of the stint leaders about 5 years ago. And so helping really train the interns. And so I've done trainings on evangelism. How do you share the gospel? How do you have effective one-on-one conversations? All sorts of trainings throughout the year about biblical finance management, to godly sexuality and dating, to every other topic that you can think of, apologetics, and those sorts of things to help our interns really become well-rounded Christians.
Yeah, no, I love that. And your emphasis on apologetics as a going hand in hand with evangelism, I think is huge,
Yeah,
especially with the youth demographic. It is for everyone. I think there are adults, obviously, too, that are very concerned about it. I think for youth in particular, who are really wrestling and struggling with those questions, it really is tied to evangelism because those are some of the big hangups that they have. You know, is it really responsible to believe this? Does this really make sense? Because nobody wants to be duped. And so there's a
right.
sense in which your passion for that has served you well, I think, over the years. And hopefully we can lean into that even a little bit more as we build out what we're thinking about doing with Step Up to Life. Fast forward a
Yeah.
little bit, tell people kind of how, I guess, the conversation transpired for you to broach the subject of joining Step Up to Life, because behind the scenes, Lincoln and I were praying about an opportunity of this nature, but we weren't quite sure how to proceed, I suppose. We were just in the stages of prayerful thought and conversation amongst ourselves, but we hadn't maybe, gone out and specifically pursued or had that conversation with anybody else before you had talked with us. And so maybe rewind the tape for people and let them kind
Yeah.
of see how that came about.
Yeah, so it was actually right about a year ago, today. So the end of April last year. And we just had our last outreach event for the travel season that year. And I felt like God shifted something in my heart that I'd never felt. For 10 years, it's just like, this is where I am. This is where I want to be. I don't feel like God's calling me anywhere else. And I can't explain it still like clearly, but it was just, I knew that God had something different for us long term. And
Mm.
so that was a really hard realization. It was a lot of prayer, a lot of processing it with my wife. She was shocked. She was like, I love Carney. I don't want to move. And I was like, I don't either. I love what I do. And yet I know God has something different for us. And I don't want to be disobedient
Mm.
to what God is telling me to do. Even though it's great here, I love it here. I can serve God here for the rest of my life, I think. But something new is on the horizon. I just know that God is leading me. And so that started this whole process and this journey of talking with the team here, and then talking with a Christian counselor. They paid for a Christian counselor for me to go there for like 8 weeks and just process through what I was feeling God stirring in me. And so that whole process led to me realizing this would be my last travel season with the Todd Becker Foundation. And so it was like, okay, what's next? Oh, well, I felt like God was calling us back to South Dakota. That's where I'm from, and that's where my parents are at. That's where my wife's parents and all of her extended family live in that area. And for the first time ever, I guess, it was like I have a deep desire to be close to my family, and for my kids to grow up and be really good, close to their grandparents. That was
Mm.
something I never really thought about. And it's just those little things. That's just an example. And then another, just like I feel like God's leading me into a new ministry to be able to do things more with my wife and to be able to minister more with her, but then also to have new leadership in my life. And so there's kind of these four things that I felt like God was really stirring in me. And so it was clear that he was leading me into a new season. And so in October, I let the team know officially that this would be my last year here. And then November, you came, Nick, to do a training with our interns on Trinitarianism and canonicity of Scripture. And so we were talking in the parking lot just right outside my window here. And I was just sharing with you just what God was doing, that this would be my last year. But I have a passion to reach people with the gospel. Like, I believe that I'm just an evangelist. I love helping people understand God's plan of salvation. Helping people, yeah. And so in that, I was processing with you, and I felt like God was calling me. That was just a few months after Charlie Kirk was killed. There's just so much of this stuff stirring in me. It was like, God, I want to be bold. I want to go wherever you call me. Like, I'm ready to go. My wife was on this whole kick of going through the end of the spear, which is Jim Elliot's story and all those people that went over. And so we were like watching those, reading her, the autobiographies and stuff like that, just all this type of stuff. And so it's just like God is calling us to do something, and we don't want to be cowardly. We want to be bold, like people before us have been bold for the faith. So we want to be bold. And so I was sharing some of that with you. I had a thought of starting my own ministry and going on to college campuses and just sharing the gospel with people, seeing, what happens after death. Do you know where you'd go? And as I was sharing that with you, um, I had just seen your guys' new video series that you're doing, and with Step Up to Life. And I remember my wife and I were driving up to South Dakota one weekend, and we saw that preview come out on Facebook. And she looked at me, and I had the same thought running through my mind. It was like, why start your own thing when there's already a ministry that's doing that thing, and they already are established, and you can have fantastic people that are in that ministry with you, being you and Lincoln, of course. And it was just like, we just knew right then. And so then it was like a week later, you came for training. And so I was just kind of having that conversation with you. And I had said something like that. And I said, I have no desire to start my own thing. But if God's calling me to, I want to be faithful. But if there's a position at Step Up to Life, I would love to see if that would be a fit. And from that point, you're like, that is wild. We were just talking about this, and it was just another confirmation that God truly was leading us in this whole transition and this whole season.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think you summarized that really well. And for those of you who are listening, going, okay, what is this new position, or what were you talking about? A lot of it had to do with the idea that young people are very, very interested in spiritual things right now. Gen Z, as sometimes they're referring to them, is pretty proactive and interested in either coming to church, exploring spiritual ideas, having spiritual conversations, willing to kind of maybe be open to the ideas of the metaphysical, maybe a little bit more than generations that came before them. And Step Up to Life has been wondering, okay, how do we steward this time well? How do we interface with this generation in a way that is thoughtful and relevant and effective? Because it's not just adults that we want to train, although that's often what we have done in the past. We want to make sure that everybody is getting to hear this in a way that's really going to impact them right where they are. And so when you mentioned that was kind of what you were thinking, and that the Lord had already given you permission to step away from Todd Becker Foundation, was just a matter of where would you go next. As Lincoln and I talked, we just couldn't think of anybody we would rather have jump into that role than you, as we've been working with you for several years. Lincoln, I think 8 years, and me 4.5, almost 5 years. So it was really kind of a why didn't we think of that type of moment? But I think from our end of things, we just assumed you'd always be there, that maybe you'd take that over at some point or whatever. And who knows?
Yeah.
Maybe you guys even wondered that yourselves at one point. But to have you coming on board with us is really, really exciting, because there are some things that we want to develop that are probably very much akin to some of the things you did with Stint. Role in what Step Up to Life does a little bit more, maybe at the forefront of what you present. And so let's talk a little bit about that. If people are curious, like, what is it that you guys are coming up with? And I'll get it going. We don't have like all the specific details, but the big idea is basically what we want to do is leverage our partnerships with other parachurches that we already work with: Fellowship of Christian Athletes, Campus Life, Youth for Christ, all those types of groups, apologetic, young programs like the Leadership Summit, things like this that give high school and middle school and college students a way to think about their faith deeply, responsibly, thoughtfully. I'll come in providing kind of the academic backbone because I'm the resident geek around here. And you've got some training that you've done through Biola in apologetics, which is great. On top of the experience that you've had building out the STINT program itself, is you've helped gap year students kind of hone their ability to think about some of the stuff you already mentioned: reliability of the Bible. You were always bringing in different speakers. I got the privilege to be a part of that group. But we really want to appeal to these different parachurches and come alongside them and say, hey, give us your top 2 or 3 guys and gals that really have a passion for outreach and want to sharpen their faith, deepen their walk with Christ. And we would love to invite them into what we're calling, at least right now anyway, the Step Up to Life Ambassadors program. And so anyway, maybe I'll let you kind of spitball on that now and what you're brainstorming so far. This is all kind of a work in progress, but for those of you listening, that's kind of the idea here. So we're going to spend the next several months trying to flesh that out.
Yeah. Well, I tell you what, I cannot wait for June. That's when I, start with you, and just to come and be with you for a few days, Nick, through like just several times throughout June, and just start fleshing this out. What is God calling us to do? Praying into this just very intentionally. I know we've already been praying individually about it, but now it's just like, okay, God, what do you want? What is going to be effective? And, I have a little bit of a unique angle, like working with these kids who are just coming out of high school. Man, when they feel like they are being equipped for the kingdom of God, they are just so excited. I tell you what, there's nothing better than getting back on the bus after an outreach event and our interns coming in, and they cannot stop talking about their one-on-one conversations. I mean, they are so ecstatic. They're just like, oh, you wouldn't believe, and then they said this, and then I said this, and it's just like, but all the things that they're saying are things that we've been able to equip them with, these tools of evangelism, and they're actually using it, putting it into practice. And so I think that's the heart of what Step Up to Life, the ambassadors program, would potentially be, is we want people to actually be able to use this. I don't think information is great, but if you don't put it into practice, you lose it after a few months. It's like, we want this to be so practical, so simple, that we can encourage and really equip students to step out in boldness and in faith. And Nick, I remember when we were first talking through some of this, something that you said that was really profound to me, and I just love the heart of this, is what we're doing is about refining, not replacing. So we're not coming in and saying like, oh, we should just go replace these ministries. No, like, we love what these other ministries are doing, from FCA to Summit to all the, Youth for Christ and all that. But if we can offer something that helps refine a bit of their evangelism process to make it more, I don't know if biblical is the right word, but you know what I mean? Like, make it more effective, make it more realistic for their students to actually be involved in, like, that would just be a huge victory. And so, like you said, going into these groups and saying, hey, give us your top 2 or 3 guys and gals, and we want to take them and help them become subtle ambassadors, Step Up to Life, SUTL, subtle ambassadors for, and they'll learn how to share the gospel really effectively. Because we know that if we went in and we just tried to train and equip everyone in, like, let's say a high school youth group, well, most of those kids are just there. They're maybe not even on saving faith, right? They're not even saved. And so trying to train them in evangelism, they're not going to care at all. But there are a few. And the thing that I'm so excited about is I really think that evangelism changes the culture. And what I mean by that is this. I think if we can equip some students with Step Up to Life and they become subtle ambassadors, and they start using what we're training to share the gospel with those who are younger than them and all their peers. There will be people who come to saving faith. They will then themselves want to be trained by Step Up to Life when they're older.
Yeah.
And then they will start reproducing disciples who will then want to be trained. And you put that into this vision of 4 or 5 years down the road. I think that some of these groups, some of these parachurch ministries, and some of these youth groups that we're going to be able to train will have a completely different culture. These kids will be excited about the things of God. They're going to be invested in pursuing God and his purposes in their life. And I think Step Up to Life is going to be a part of what God uses for that. And so that's what's so exciting to me. And of course, we're still developing what that program looks like and how we're going to train and all that type of stuff. But I think that you mentioned it already, but some of the stuff that I do with Stint, we can implement into this program, some intro to apologetics, getting these kids to start thinking a little bit deeper. Because, like you said earlier, I think all of the ideas from atheism to moral relativism to postmodernism, all those types of things, they're bankrupt at the end of the day. And Christians have the best answers. The Bible provides the best answer. The Christian worldview gives the best answers to these really hard questions that these students are wrestling with, but they just don't realize it yet. And so if we can help them realize that when they're young and get them on a track to start sharing that with their peers, it's just humbling to even think about being a part of that.
Yeah.
So absolutely. I just can't wait.
No, I think it's the opportunity is almost overwhelming.
Yeah.
In a good way.
Yeah.
In a good way.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think that these two pieces of the apologetics side of things, the Christian worldview, the evangelism piece that makes it actually practical and effective, are a kind of a potent combination that often is just a little bit outside of a lot of ministries' wheelhouse in terms of what they can really emphasize. They do a great job with what they do. They're very inclusive. They're great at bringing a crowd together. They're great at creating community. They're great at sharing the gospel in a very simple way. And a lot of people do come to faith. But I feel like we can add an element to what they're doing that will sharpen and refine and energize it in a way that's, like you've said, can actually change the ability of the students themselves to then make disciples at a much deeper level and take more ownership at a much younger age, which I think is huge, because if you can take ownership of your faith by the time you get out of high school, or at least before you graduate college, you know what you believe, you know why you believe it, you know how to explain it and share it with other people. That's not only kind and compassionate, but genuinely compelling. That's huge, because the number one reason people don't share their faith is fear. Fear of rejection, fear of confrontation, which in some sense that's good, because that means people want to get along with others. That's a good thing. But where it becomes not good is where that fear limits their behavior to the point where they don't engage, right? So on the one hand, the desire to get along with people is almost getting all of the weight, all of the emphasis. And we're coming along to help balance that out and say, hey, you can still be kind, you can still be compassionate, and you can also be evangelistically clear and compelling. And we have a way to help you do that. We're going to train you to do that in a way where you can actually look forward to sharing your faith now instead of dreading it. And so, I'm excited about this, because knowing you, all the different things that you've already done the last 10 years, the different types of conversations and training you've already provided to Gap Year students, on top of, like you said, the thousands of conversations you've had with youth all over the Midwest, sets you up perfectly to have the right mindset to try and, okay, what would this look like? What should this look like? What kind of questions should we be asking? What kind of approach should we be taking? Because that's what you've been doing for the last decade. So I'm excited. We're going to need, if you're listening to this right now, please be praying for us. We're going to need a lot of wisdom.
Yes.
And a lot of insight from the Lord on how to build this, and favor too, because I think some of the leaders we're going to approach, this will be kind of a newer idea for them, but hopefully one that they'll feel is really an asset and something that's going to be a boost for them that won't be one more thing they have to add to their to-do list, but that they can actually just link arms with us and we can inject some extra energy and life into what they're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I can't wait to see what that all looks like. It's going to be, yeah, there's so many ideas floating in my head that I can't wait to run by you and see, yeah, like you said, what sticks and what's going to be effective and
Yeah.
how this is going to all work. So,
Yeah. We'll have to do an update 6 months from now and kind of
yes.
give a preview of what we've got cooking up. But okay, so
Yeah.
let's shift gears here before we land the plane. Tell us a little bit about your family, your wife, your kids, and then your plans, because you're moving.
Yeah.
And what that all means for your interaction with Step Up to Life, because some people will be kind of curious about some of the logistics.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I love my family so much. I'm just so grateful. So yeah, my wife, Anna, like I said, we're actually high school sweethearts. So we're pretty young. When we got married, we were 19 and 20, which I think is great. I encourage people to do, if they're following the Lord and yeah, it makes you grow up fast and actually man up, to like lead and be like, okay, how can I love my wife really well and lead like Christ and love her like Christ loves the church, So I think people who are ready in that season of life, I think it's great. And so we got married young, and then God blessed us with our first son, Thomas, a year, 1 year, 1 week, and 1 day after we got married. We had
Wow.
Thomas. So we got pregnant pretty quick, but it was a beautiful thing. And then Adeline came a few years later. Evan, he's our littlest guy right now. He's 14 months. And then we have a girl coming here in a couple of weeks. So I'm just so blessed. God has blessed me with just an amazing life, amazing kids. I mean, raising family is not just always pretty. There's so much chaos and yelling, like yelling. What I mean, the kids are yelling. That could sound bad out of context. Just so much screaming and yelling from the kids, and you're like trying to wrangle them up to eat supper, and you're just like, this is crazy and chaotic. But it's also so beautiful. It's so beautiful. I've really learned to appreciate God's design for marriage. I just love God's design. One man, one woman for one lifetime, raising these kids to love him and to know him. And so it's just beautiful. I could talk about that for a long time. I have a lot of other things that I love about just family ministry, just being the dad and ministering to my own kids and how I do some of that. But yeah, and so we are going to be moving here in the end of June. And so we're moving back to South Dakota. Like I mentioned, that's where my family's from. That's where my wife's family's from. And so I'm actually going to be working for Step Up to Life remotely, which I know is just a new thing that Step Up to Life's going into. And it's a new thing for me too. Like, I don't know exactly all the logistics of how that'll work exactly yet, but I think that it will work very well. I think that, Step Up to Life has champions all over the world, on all these different continents. And I'm only going to be 4 hours away. So those people are like 20 hours away. You have to get there by plane. I can get to you guys in a car in 4 hours. So if I need to come down for some meetings and those sorts of things, I will. I know I'll be coming down probably at least once a month to staff meetings or board meetings and that. And then as we get rolling, we'll just see what that looks like and how much I need to come down. And I'll be on Zoom calls with you a lot and Lincoln a lot and the team for meetings. And so but I think it's going to be a beautiful combination of just what God's been leading me to be close to family, but also to continue the work that I feel like He's really put on my heart and given me a passion for. And
Mm.
so now, when I look back now, I was telling someone this, one of my friends, good friends here in Kearney, I said, it's beautiful how God leads us one step at a time. Because if I could go back a year ago when God started stirring in me all of this, and I could see where I'd be at right now, I would have totally messed this whole thing up. Because I would have called you the next day. I would have called you like, "Hey Nick, I'm going to work for you this next year." I just would have messed this whole thing up. But God's called just one. He just called me to be obedient and faithful in the next step. And so the next step, the next step, the next step, and now being here, looking at where God has led us and how all of this that we never could have thought or imagined could come together, where I can still be doing what I'm passionate about, but yet live in small town South Dakota. It's like, God is so good. I'm just so grateful to God. He's so kind. He's so kind to me and to my family that He would allow all of these desires that He laid on my heart to come to fruition in a way that I could have never thought of. So
Mm.
God is so good.
He is. Sometimes it's an embarrassment of riches in that regard. It's it's not as if it's ministry is different. It's not as if, at least hopefully not, that you get into it thinking, oh, I'm going to have, the most lucrative job on the planet or something like that. But there is some sweetness about the arrangements God makes sometimes that are so tailored to your design and how he's created you, that sometimes it's mind blowing, and it's so specific sometimes that it's shockingly delightful, and it kind of gives you a
Mm,
holy awe of God, that he
yeah.
would be so kind, as you said, to the point where he'll design these situations in such a way to maximize your delight while also maximizing his glory.
Yeah. Well said.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
it's
He
it's pretty
loves to give
cool.
good gifts to his children, which is just
He
like,
does.
wow.
He
The
does.
God of the universe cares for me and cares for you. Like, it's just, yeah, it
Yeah.
really is
Yeah.
truly awesome when you think about it. So,
Well, we're looking forward to introducing you in person. So if you're listening to this and you're wondering, well, when do we get to meet this guy and his family? Come to our annual banquet on September 11th this year, because he's
okay.
going to be there. We're going to be introducing him. You get a chance to connect with Anna and his family and interact with him in person. But we're just excited. This is going to be one crazy year in a good way. It's just there's
Yeah.
so much coming down the pike with what we have going on. We're headed back to Africa in November.
Mm.
Um, so Lincoln and I for sure will be there. I'm not sure whether we're dragging you along or not, or who knows, maybe Lincoln will sub me out for you. Maybe you'll be going and I'll be staying. Who knows? Um, but that's in Nairobi, where we'll gather our
Mm.
African champions from about 14 different nations all over Africa to reconnect,
Praise God.
encourage, and train them. And if you're listening to this and you don't know, part of what I do at Sub Up to Life too is a pastoral encouragement aspect. So my doctoral work was in pastoral resilience and longevity and mental health, navigating the difficulties of the pastoral role. Because if you're going to be biblically faithful to be a pastor, as the Bible actually describes it, not just be some guy who gets up and tickles ears and tells people what they want to hear, or mimics or parrots their favorite news channel every Sunday or something. But you actually want to be faithful, teach through the scriptures, call people to love their enemies and share their faith
Mm.
and humble themselves before God, and do what he says rather than what comes natural. You're going to suffer. You're going to have some hardships. And of course, a lot of our champions all over the world suffer not only socially, but they
Mm.
literally suffer physically, where their churches are sometimes burned down. Sometimes they are fleeing for their lives, whether that's in the Sudan or DRC Congo or wherever they happen to be, because Christianity is either illegal or seen in a very hostile fashion, where they attract actual violence against them because they're being faithful to serve Christ and lead people to him and pastor. And so that's part of what I do, especially when we go to these other countries, is I take them through a exercise in managing and working through pastoral pain, because it's kind of a lonely aspect of being a pastor, whether you're in America or you're in Africa, or you're in Latin America, or where we just got back from Asia. A lot of these guys, more emotionally reserved, but very many of them broke down weeping and had never gone through an
Mm.
exercise like that, where they could actually talk about how difficult it is to constantly be under that type of pressure as a leader, but have almost nobody who really understands what that feels like. Because
Mm.
it's different than being a public leader of a school, or even as a politician or someone who gets up and teaches in public. It's different than that, because your relationship with people is more intimate, it's more close, it's more personal, because you're actually giving them counsel on how to live their very lives. You're interacting with them in a way that's much more personal. You're not just standing up in front of them and teaching a class like a professor or a teacher would. You're actually breaking the third wall, and you're having dinner at their house. You know what their family's going through. They know what your family's
Yeah.
going through. I mean, it's so much deeper and so much more difficult to manage all of that. And when the people that you're ministering to in that way don't always love where you're leading them, it's going to cause some difficulty. So anyway, that gives you a bigger picture of some of what I also add to the conversation, if you've ever been curious about that. But all that just to say, there's a lot we have going on at Step Up to Life. So there's several initiatives. This is one of them. Another one, what we're thinking about doing is kind of a little bit more broad over the course of the whole ministry, which I won't say right now, but hopefully in about 6 months to a year, we can maybe be more specific on what some of those developments look like. But basically, God is running with this thing faster than we can keep up. And we're just glad he lets us tag along.
Amen.
So
we'll have to do an update in 6 months, because who knows where things will be at then. But
yeah,
I'm pretty excited. I mentioned this to you, Nick, but we've had, I have so many different connections with pastors and youth pastors around the Midwest, just from my work with the Todd Becker Foundation. And I've, called some of them that I'm pretty close with and just let them know I'm leaving. And they're like, well, what are you doing? And I'm telling them about that. And I'm telling them about the possibility of the Subtle Ambassadors program. And I've already had several that are like, can we be a test church? Like, we want to, you come and you test it on our youth ministry, and you come and equip some of our kids, and we want to, and so it's just crazy. I really do think that whatever God allows us to develop these next few months, I think there are going to be a lot of churches that are very excited about how this could come in and equip their students in a way that you said so perfectly earlier. They're doing so many good things, but some of these topics, some of this worldview stuff might be a little bit outside of their comfort zone or what they've really honed their skill in communicating. And I think we can bring some of those elements into their youth group, these students, that'll make them go a little bit deeper in their thinking, that will actually really refine and just equip their students. So I think there's going to be several people who are excited. So I don't know where this thing's going to be at 6 months or a year, but God does. So he'll lead us. So
that reminds me of a story I want to share before we close, that when I got to the Stint Discipleship Weekend this last March, over, I think, the 20th through the 21st, or maybe 22nd.
Yep, that was right.
Two of the guys came up to me and they told me a story about something that happened because they're working in Kearney at, I think, a local grocery store or something. And a coworker came up and said something like, "You really believe this Bible stuff?" And he's like, "Well, yeah, I do." And I was like, "Yeah, but why? But why do you believe it's true? Like, why do you think the Bible's trustworthy?" And apparently, like, over his lunch break, he was able to run out to his car and grab his notes on canonicity and Trinitarianism. And he actually took his coworker through it. And his coworker was like, "Okay, I'm convinced. I want to know more." And thought, that is wild. Because basically that was an intensive training. We spend like one whole day from 10 in the morning till almost 4:30 or 5 in the evening.
Yeah.
With a lunch break. Of course, there's a Q&A over the lunch break. Just learning where did we get the Bible? Why is it trustworthy? How can we, understand, who decided what books are in there, all of that jazz. Why is God, Trinity, all of that. Those can be pretty tricky topics to tackle. So for an 18, 19-year-old guy to confidently run out to his car, grab those notes and explain this to his coworker and basically convince him in about 15 minutes, that just blew me away and just gave me so much joy to be like, this is why this matters. He took someone that was basically a skeptic and on the fringes, kind of sensed that maybe there was a God, sensed that he wanted to believe maybe, but didn't want to believe it blindly.
Yeah.
And to be able to, he had the resource, he had the training, he had the confidence to be able to engage in that conversation in a way that was effective at work. I mean, that was just a joy for me to hear that. So those are the types of stories I'm looking forward to.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. And the last thing I'll say, I know we could talk for like 4 more hours probably, but the people listening are like, oh man. But the last thing on that I just love is, these kids, these students want to be trained. They want to be equipped. I mean, they're filled with the Spirit of God. They have a desire and a passion to be used by God. And I think that that's what we're seeing in this generation, like you mentioned, is people are open to spiritual conversations. God is doing a work right now that's just really special. And I think there's obviously, everyone knows, there's so much hurt in this world. There's so much pain. And they're starting to realize that, man, the way that all these different worldviews that they've been gathered as they've grown up, secularism and all that, it just doesn't have any good answers. And they're just living in despair, and they don't even know it maybe. But as soon as they start seeing the light and the hope of the gospel, it just transforms them, because God is just working throughout all the evil in the world right now to bring about the advancement of his gospel and the advancement of his kingdom. And so it's just so cool to see like an intern like that stepping out, being trained. But it's like, because they want to actually use it. I think that most of these guys, they don't want to just take in information. And something that we train our team is, apologetics really it's the removing of roadblocks to share the gospel. And so it's not just about having head knowledge and going and trying to convince someone. Well, that doesn't really do anything. But if you can help them understand why Christianity is reliable, why the Bible is reliable, for the sake of them going into the gospel, I mean, that's what we've trained our interns to use apologetics as, because we know that most doubts from people who don't believe in God really aren't intellectual. There's some that are, but most of them are volitional. It's just their emotions. They don't want God to exist. They don't want there to be someone that they have to submit their lives to. So that's the real hard issue, the heart issue that we need to train and equip people to get to. And so apologetics is useful in its context, and for the sake of really making evangelism useful in those contexts. So yeah, thanks for sharing that story. I didn't even know that. They haven't told me that one, so I need to go find out who that is today on the bus.
Yeah, dig into that, because that was a great story. But no, we're going to be looking forward to a lot more of those stories in the coming years, I think, as we see God develop this. And so it's a lot to be excited about and prayerful for. So, well, I should let you get going. You have a busy day ahead of you with the Todd Becker Foundation still, because you're still hitting it pretty hard with them up until June. But thanks for joining us. I think this gives people a pretty good insight into who you are and what we have coming down the pike at Step Up to Life. So yeah, thanks for joining us. Appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah, thanks so much, Nick.
So, and hey, if you're listening to this and you're thinking, man, there's a lot going on, there is, and we need your help. So if you're willing to help support us in prayer, financially, networking, or if you're a youth pastor or a pastor who needs training, would like us to interface with you, contact you about being part of our pilot program as we kind of roll some of this stuff out, please let us know. You can email me at nick@stepuptolife.com, or Lincoln at stepuptolife.com, or now even Alex. If you're interested, if you're working with youth, middle school through college, he'll be the guy. So you can email him at alex@stepuptolife.com. Although, just know he doesn't actually start till June, so he might not get back to you right away, at least not yet. But we're happy to interface with you on it and spread the word. Let people know that this is coming down the pike, because we want to interact and interface with everybody who's interested in it, and be as effective as we can. Also, just so you know, we already have a small group study that is available online that churches and ministries have started to use, whether that's Fellowship of Christian Athletes or churches that are taking their small groups through it or whatever. And then we actually have a full version of that seminar that we've just finished shooting and is being edited and should be available probably early fall. And another reason to come to the banquet on September 11th is that we're going to preview a lot of that longer form training seminar, so you can kind of get a taste and a feel for what that's like, and you might want to use it in your context. So, all right, Alex, thanks for joining me. Have a great day. Tell everyone hi for us.
Will do. I will tell them hi.
And we will talk to you soon.
Sounds good. Thanks, brother.
All right, man. Take care. That's all for this episode of Ministry Minded. Thanks for listening. We hope you were encouraged and inspired to keep serving Jesus biblically as you follow him on your journey. If you appreciate this podcast, please subscribe, share it with your circle, and leave us a positive review. If you'd like to help us keep creating new episodes, you can do so with a tax-exempt donation online at stepuptolife.com/give.